Everyone, we're going to be going over a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, written by Frank Turek and Dr. Norman L. Geisler. I just got into it today, read the foreword, the acknowledgments, and the introduction. So as I go through it chapter by chapter, I'm going to kind of hit some of my favorite points with my highlighter, and then have a discussion about some of those points, which is open to everyone. I think it's important to say that none of these points on their own are razor-edged swords that are going to cut a swath through atheism and turn every atheism into a Christian overnight. But they're good talking points, and they're helpful. And combined with an already strong faith, I think it's integral. So you'll have to forgive shaky camera work. I don't have a webcam, so I'm just holding my cell phone up. And you get the whole desk in the background there. But anyways, so I'm reading into this book here. Oh, that's all going to be backwards for you, whatever. And the first thing is the foreword, which is actually written by David Limbaugh, or however you say that, the guy who wrote Jesus on Trial, another book I'm reading. A couple other books, too. Great guy. So his foreword goes into detail saying that this is one of his favorite books. And on the back it actually says, I already know 10 people to whom I would give this book. It is truly a godsend. So he really loves it. Then it goes into acknowledgments, which I won't talk too much about, because that's not very interesting. Let's see here. And the first part that I've highlighted, so a few pages in, and it actually just kind of goes over the different types of, main types of beliefs, which is the first one being theism, God made all. Pantheism, something that I never really gave much thought about, which is that God is all. That's Zen Buddhism, Hinduism, and New Age, whatever New Age is. And of course atheism, no God at all. So those are the three different main types of things in the world right now, with theism taking the lion's share, with Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and all those other different sects, especially within Christianity. So that's kind of a cool overview that really gave me some context, and he goes into detail about the different ways to explain those things. On the next page, he talks about some of the problems with Christianity. And the number one problem, as it's been said before, a lot of people think the biggest problem with Christianity is Christians, hypocritical ones. And that's definitely a big problem in the world today, and I think it's important to understand and to say that not every Christian, despite how they say they believe in the Bible, follows the Bible. And it goes through three different objections that people have against Christianity. Intellectual objections, which is the common objection of the atheist. Those are, I think that one kind of speaks for itself. Lack of evidence and different stuff like that. The second one is emotional obstacles. The idea of going to hell, and the idea that an all-loving God would allow the suffering that happens in the world. And then the third one is volitional. I think probably how you say that, volitional reasons to reject Christianity. That's essentially talking about people who don't like the rules. They don't like the idea of giving up their lifestyle, and they don't like the idea of serving anyone. Giving way to the quote, it is better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Yeah, so those are three different objections to Christianity, kind of grouped and categorized there, so that's kind of useful to know. There's a quote I highlighted in here. I guess he's talking to a guy named Barry, and he says, Barry, it's virtually impossible to know everything about a particular topic. And it's certainly impossible when that topic is an infinite God. So there has to come a point where you realize that you have enough information to come to a conclusion, even if unanswered questions exist or remain. Now this is useful for atheists and theists alike, because atheists have a lot of unanswered questions, but they feel that their position has been supported more strongly than a Christian stance, and therefore is the correct stance. There are always going to be unanswered questions, I think. I don't think we'll ever know everything. And Christianity, of course, too, has unanswered questions. There are things we have to take on faith. Not everything is answered by the Bible. If it was, the Bible would be 2 stories tall. You know, a lot of people say, oh, well, where's the dinosaurs in the Bible? And Christians will say, oh, well, listen to this about the behemoth and stuff. And, you know, and you start to take that on supposition that that's what it's talking about, and maybe it is. But, you know, just, it's not a sure thing. But the fact that the Bible isn't all-inclusive and doesn't have every single thing there is to have doesn't necessarily mean that it's not accurate. So that's kind of a good quote there. Conversely, nor is it entirely true based purely on the fact that atheism doesn't answer every question about the universe, that atheism isn't accurate. Which, by the way, as to my beliefs, it's not, but irrelevant. It then goes on the next page, and there are a few examples of evidence that they'll unpack in the ensuing chapters. I'll summarize them. The first example is talking about scientific evidence overwhelmingly confirms that the universe exploded into being out of nothing. Now, there are some people that don't feel that way, but the book seems to be, or I should say Frank Turek seems to be confident enough that most science points towards the Big Bang. And then it goes on to say that it takes more faith to accept that nothing made everything out of nothing than it does to accept that something or somebody, God, made everything out of nothing. Which, of course, I'm sure I'm going to be responded to with the, oh, well, who made God then? And there we go into our circular reasoning. Second thing, it talks about the simplest life form contains the information equivalent of 1,000 encyclopedias. Now that is interesting. I've never heard that before. I'll have to look into that more before I understand it. And it says that Christians believe only an intelligent being can create a life form with that much information. Atheists believe non-intelligent forces can do it. It goes on to say Christians have evidence to support their conclusion. Since atheists don't have any evidence, their belief requires a lot more faith. It's going to take some research, but this is just an introduction. There's going to be whole chapters on this stuff. So I'm patient. And then it says, hundreds of years beforehand, it talks about the prophetic, is that the word? Prophecies, about Jesus and stuff that he fulfilled. And it's actually a big paragraph that talks about the evidence for Jesus and his resurrection, and so that's going to have its own chapter too. So those are 3 points that it's going to talk about throughout the book. If I flip the page a little more, it goes through a 12-point outline that I will not go all the way into, talking about exactly how it's going to prove the main mission of the book, which is that it takes more faith to be a non-Christian, and that includes any type of non-Christian, than it does to be a Christian. That's a bold assertion, and it says several times in here that is a bold and arrogant assertion until you prove it. I'm looking forward to the proof. I have another thing highlighted here. It says, let's see here. We believe that unexamined faith is not worth believing. Furthermore, contrary to popular opinion, Christians are not supposed to just have faith. Okay, this is important for anyone who's listening who is Christian. Christians are commanded to know what they believe and why they believe it. They are commanded to give answers to those who ask. That's 1 Peter 3:15. And to demolish arguments against the Christian faith, which is 2 Corinthians 10:4-5. So that's another cool quote. Basically saying that while it's not damning to be a passive Christian who's content with living a good life and living in God's faith. I'm eating my mustache, sorry. I'm trying to pull my mustache out of my mouth. And, it's not damning for you, but at the same time, don't give apologetics a hard time, because there are passages in the Bible that tell us to do these things to one degree or another. Some people take it too far, but I digress. Then there's actually a quote by, I'm not going to try to say this guy's name, Nietzsche? I don't know. You'll know who I'm talking about, I'm sure, that N-word, Niets or Zsche, however you say his name, I'll have to look it up. He says, if one were to prove that the God of the Christians to us, we should be even less able to believe in him. It is our preference that decides against Christianity, not arguments. And it goes on to talk about how his objection to Christianity is not just intellectual, but volitional, or however you say that word, like we talked about before, or at least emotional. And then C.S. Lewis writes, The irresistible and indisputable are two weapons which the very nature of God's scheme forbids him to use. Now that's the answer to the whole, why doesn't God just come down here and show us? Why doesn't he want everybody in heaven? So why doesn't he just come down here and show us and just take away the free will, which his coming would do? Take away free will. I can talk about that in a separate point. And it's because his entire design and purpose for us kind of prohibits him from doing that without going against his own design. Of course he could, but presumably he won't. And it looks like I've dog-eared the page here because then it actually starts to go into the first chapter, which is going to prove the first of 12 points. Truth about reality is knowable. That's cryptic. And also, the opposite of true is false. I think that's going to be an odd chapter to read, proving those two things that I've already kind of accepted as true, but hey, I think there's going to be some good points in there. So that's as far as I've gotten right now in the introduction. I'm really excited to see some of the points that the book makes from here on out. There are a few good talking points already from some of the quotes I read, so I definitely welcome a little discussion. I'll do my best to put some bullet points below here in text so that you don't have to watch this whole 11-minute, 13 seconds right now video to pick out the points that we can talk about. So I'm really excited. I'll read this book, I'll get more videos up, and we can have a good discussion. So everybody have a good night now.